Big Frank's relationship with Andy Warhol is kind of interesting too, in that Andy is clearly attracted to him, or at least interested in him, and Big Frank is always telling him to not even think of any kind of queer thoughts about him, as he put it.
Yeah.
There's a scene with Andy Warhol and Truman Capote, and they hate each other, but for whatever reason, they get into an argument, and Andy Warhol had kind of one up Truman Capote in this media rally that was around him, talking about To Kill a Mockingbird and In Cold Blood, but more along the lines about how Harper Lee had gotten all this fame and recognition, and how he could possibly top that. But they have an interesting discussion, and it gets sexual eventually, where Truman Capote is trying to get Andy Warhol to give him head. Big Frank is in the corner laughing his ass off, and gets them to stop. But that scene is interesting too, in that it eventually leads to Big Frank assaulting Andy Warhol, and Andy Warhol had always maintained this veneer, as he does with everyone except for Bit, until that moment. So once he's threatened, he shows his real side. He talks in this phony kind of accent in front of the media, but then you see his real character come out with Bit and Frank.
Well, yeah, and that's what a lot of people have said, that Andy Warhol truly was like that, in that Andy Warhol was just doing this persona of the fey dilettante kind of thing, just like Michael Jackson. A lot of people who knew Michael Jackson said that he didn't really talk in that, hi, I'm Michael Jackson kind of thing, that he really thought, yeah, I'm Mike Jackson, and that was just what he did for the public. So I think that's probably correct, and it is just an interesting little tidbit to use, the Warhol and Truman Capote thing. They were famously contemptuous of each other. As far as I know, they never got into any public row, but in private, who knows what might have really happened between them. And again, it's one of those things that you're taking real characters and you're plugging them into this book, and it seems perfectly natural and organic, because these are New York characters in that era. They would have known or been associated with at least secondary or tertiary mob level figures to get their work into galleries, to get dealing with museum workers, dealing with all kinds of public officials that would have been in some way tied to corruption, that would have been mob influence. So it's normal that might have happened. And Andy Warhol's studio is used by Bit to do some of his cheap pornos, which again is something that is very plausible.
I also wanted to talk to you about the celebrities that you litter throughout the book. They're varying in substance. You mentioned two that have actually pretty great scenes in them, with Sonny Liston and Johnny Mathis. It's very odd too that one of Paulie's favorite singers is Nat King Cole, yet he treats Johnny Mathis in the way that he does. Talk a little bit about that aspect of Paulie's character, his obvious racist tendencies, but at the same time, he regards the king of is Nat King Cole. So yeah. It's interesting in that manner.
Well, I mean, people have that all the time. It's called a lot of people here in New York, in the U.S. and in New York, and even in the U.S. here, where I live in Texas and when I lived in Minnesota, is that when white people get to know black people or respect a black person for some reason, they think of them as not really black. They become sort of honorary whites. And in this book, for whatever reason, we know that Paulie loathes Frank Sinatra. He beats the crap out of him in the 1930s, and even decades later, we see Frank Sinatra is still wary of Paulie. But for whatever reason, I guess he was a fan of the music of Nat King Cole, and so Nat King Cole to him isn't really black. And so the funny thing is that when for Paulie's birthday, Big Frank wants to have Nat King Cole come and sing for him, but it's a year after Nat King Cole has died. I think the scene is set in like 64 or something, or 65, and Nat King Cole was dead for a year or two. So they find out that some famous black singer who has a smooth voice is singing at a club in Manhattan or something. And to these mooks, these goombas, a famous black singer, oh, it must be Nat King Cole because all blacks are the same. So they go, and it's Vito Vincetti and his crew. They kidnap Johnny Mathis. Johnny Mathis is brought to this club and made to sing. And he's singing, and they tell him to sing his hits. So I think he may be singing a Mathis song, or maybe he is singing Nat King Cole. And no one realizes the difference except, of course, Paulie, who's like, wait a minute, that's not Nat King Cole. And because Johnny Mathis has a bit more feminine, not that Nat King Cole was a rough and ready macho guy, but Mathis is a little bit more fey, and Paulie detects that he's queer, and the fact that he's black and queer too is going to make Paulie even the more incensed that they got the wrong black guy to sing for him. And so, there's some funny scenes where Big Frank and is sort of upbraiding Vito and them, like, I thought you were getting Nat King Cole. He said, yeah, he's a black guy who sings, or he's a nigger who sings, as they say something. And so you're playing on the idea that all black people look alike to white people, that white people have this idea of honorary black people. If you're a sports hero and Jim Brown or Jackie Robinson or Wilt Chamberlain played for your team, he was your guy, even though in real life, if you knew him, you still didn't want him living in your neighborhood. Paulie probably would not have wanted to have invited Nat King Cole over to eat at his apartment, but
although he let him fuck his sister.
Yeah, which is again another famous kind of saying that was used in my era, the 50s, 60s, 70s, where people would say, I think he's a scumbag, but I let him fuck my sister. That kind of thing, which goes beyond race, but that's another cultural trope that's really identified with the 20th century.
It seems utterly random, though, because it's as if you admire Michael Jordan and then disdain Wilt Chamberlain, because Nat King Cole and Johnny Mathis are very comparable as singers in terms of their quality. So his admiration of Nat King Cole over Johnny Mathis, even with some of the reasoning that he displayed, is very odd. But it just shows the utter random ways that people's minds work.